Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Movie Mates video. I'm Matthew, joined by my wonderful co-host and best friend.
Callum,
Hey man, great to see you. So today we're
good to see
finally
you.
concluding a saga on the channel, which has been ongoing for a while, which is the Planet of the Apes movies. So yeah, we're finally getting the new ones out. So like Rise, Dawn, and War. So looking forward to that, man. It's been a while since we've done a podcast, hasn't it? We've done a few smaller videos recently, but back in the podcast.
Yeah, and that's fully my fault. I'm very
Oh no.
unreliable when it comes to scheduling.
Okay,
But
no
I'm really
worries.
excited to get back into it, and I'm glad that we're starting off with a conclusion. We're
Yes,
finally we're finishing an endeavor that we started. And it feels satisfying to do so.
absolutely, man, absolutely. And yeah, just before we get into these three movies, thanks very much for everyone who supported the channel recently. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the eight movies down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts, especially on these three, which are probably arguably some of the most popular sci-fi movies of the last decade. Wouldn't you say, mate?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. So I was just looking over my notes for Rise of the Planet of the Apes because I watched that whenever we intended to do this the first time around. So
Yeah.
I watched that maybe 3 months ago. So like whenever I read that, it's not going to seem like my own words because I saw it months ago. I wrote these months ago. But
Sure.
yeah, they're definitely massively popular, which surprised me because they don't seem that accessible. Like they seem very sci-fi oriented.
Yeah.
Like
No, for
it
sure.
doesn't seem like something that would have a sort of a widespread appeal.
No, for sure. And there's like don't get me wrong, there's some big stars in these films, but overall there's no like headlining real massive action heroes in this, because I suppose for the main characters on this are actually apes. So but yeah, no, I remember these movies when they came out. I remember Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and then Dawn, I think I watched when they came out. And then for War of the Planet of the Apes, I didn't see it immediately. What about you, mate? What was your experience with these films?
Well, I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes right before Dawn of the Planet of the Apes came out in cinemas, and then I saw Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes both in the cinema. And I remember seeing War for the Planet of the Apes, and it was just it was a difficult watch the first time around. And we'll get into why, but the this time watching this today, I mean, I even had to delay the podcast by an hour because I literally fell asleep watching it. I wasn't
I know what you
bored.
mean.
Like we'll get into it. It's a good film, but it feels like it's 4 hours long.
Yeah, no, I know it does. And I remember when that film came out, I watched the Chris Stuckman review immediately as it came out, and he was like, "This movie's a masterpiece. This movie's a masterpiece." So then that sort of inspired me to get in and watch it. And we will get into that movie later on, but it's just interesting. Like, it seems that film is definitely like probably one of the most critically acclaimed of the three for sure. I remember that it was a huge when it came out. It was huge when it came out. But yeah, I suppose we'll crack on with the first one, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Then yeah,
hmm
no
So this is
worries.
obviously another scientific cautionary tale, as we're sort of used to with these films. The issue of humans driving forth like this unnatural evolution. And for once, it was weird to see that it's not the bureaucratic board members of like this science company that
Yeah,
this
I
lab,
know what I mean. Yeah.
but it's actually the scientists themselves pushing for the human trials. It's usually the greed of the board members who just want to make money, and then that leads to disaster. But here it was actually an intended force for good because the scientist wanted to save his dad. So I thought it was a nice subversion.
Oh no, for sure, man, for sure. And like you sort of said, like I think James Franco character in this, I actually really like him. I think his motives are fair. I think his dad has Alzheimer's or something similar, and it's actually yeah the motive is 100% fair. And we do love a bit of James Franco here in the channel, of course. And I actually think this is probably one of his best performances. To be fair, I think he's actually great in this.
Yeah, I think people have sort of mocked him in the last few years for like sort of phoning in his performances, or do like he does some roles like as a joke, where
Yeah,
he like messes up these like big opportunities, just for a laugh.
sure.
But I think he's really commendable in this role. Obviously, his character is recontextualized in the sequel when we see that his work has actually led to
The
the
pandemic.
murder of 499 out of 500 humans. So he's a bit less commendable with the
Yeah.
with
for
the added
sure.
context.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, with this being a reboot of the franchise, it doesn't feel anything like the originals. And I actually think it's quite similar to The Force Awakens in the sense that, it works for both new and old audiences alike. I think you can be a hardcore original like Charlton Heston fan, but likewise you could be like us and have your first Planet of the Apes experience with these films. So I think it's very much like Force Awakens in that sense. Would you agree with that consensus, or where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously more of a overt reboot than The Force Awakens, but I think that this is like The Force Awakens in that your experience is enriched by your previous experience with it. So especially I would say in the case of like War for the Planet of the Apes, it's packed like wall to wall with references to the originals, and we'll get into that when we get to that film. But I think the experience is really enriched by your fandom of the originals. So rewatching these, years on, with the context of the originals, I think I enjoyed the experience far more.
Oh, for sure, dude. Absolutely, absolutely. And like, what one thing I think, because the apes are actually like CGI this time rather than humans and prosthetics, I think that makes them. It's weird because usually I'd feel the other way around. I'm usually more of a prosthetics guy, but I think here the CGI is so well done. It's probably not so much in this film, but especially when we get on to Dawn and War, like the CGI is some of the best I've ever seen. And it's incredible, and it really gives like a real animalistic presence to the apes in this film. Like they're terrifying. Like you would not want to be caught in a room with one of those things. Like
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like it's clearly revolutionary. I don't think you can argue that, but I don't know. It's just not as charming
no, I would
as
agree
the
with you. Yeah,
makeup.
yeah, for
Because
sure.
that was such like a feat that hadn't been seen before. Won the best makeup Oscar. At the time, and this it just
I know what you
it's
mean. I
great
know what you
CGI,
mean.
but you can see it elsewhere. Like it's not something
Yeah.
new.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, because like I recently we rewatched the old Peter Jackson King Kong film, and that film came out in 2005, and the CGI on that is absolutely amazing. Like it holds up. I think it's maybe even better than this film. Um, but no, I do. It takes a certain like charm and sort of special quality away from those characters. I think no, I would agree with you on that one, dude, for sure.
And to sort of get into the narrative of the film, after the death uh of Caesar's mother, he's adopted by Will, James Franco's character. And I think there's a moment in the film where they sort of use a montage to like go through a number of years, where it develops both Caesar's age and his relationship with Will,
Sure.
and Will's relationship with his girlfriend Caroline. And I think it was really incredible passage of time.
Well, I'd agree with you, buddy. I agree with you. Like, there's always a common narrative in actually some romance films where, or just in real life, where like the couple, they're newly couple before they have a kid, they adopt a pet or something like that. I definitely feel like that's what the intended arc for this one was, for sure. Like, when they sort of adopt Caesar in that sense. And like speaking of Caesar, Andy Serkis is so good here, even though it's just he has a limited voice role because of the big reveal towards the end of the film. I think he's so good. I don't know if it was motion capture for this one as well, or is it like a different technique?
I believe it has been motion capture since the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it, man? It's so great. But no, I do agree with you. I think the Will and Caroline relationship actually is it's actually for a sci-fi film. It's actually quite charming. It's quite sweet, and it's a pity. Yeah, they're not in the other two. To be honest.
It is massively, and there's sort of a contradiction in the character of Will, in that he views Caesar as his son, and he fights to have Caesar seen as at least not as a human, but as an equivalent, as an equal to humans. He wants him to have the respect of any other like human child. Uh, but then therefore you would think he would wish him to be judged by human standards. But then he commits a violent attack against the neighbor, and then he's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like
Yeah,
he's going to be held in this sanctuary for 90 days. I'm like, well, if he was a human and he had attacked someone like that, he's going to prison for years. I
yeah.
think 90 days is more than fair.
Yeah, I remember that scene when I saw it as a kid that like scared the shit out of me, to be honest with you. It's just there's one scene in the film where like Will and Caroline take Caesar out for a walk and then like a dog barks at him and Caesar just absolutely like yells the forest out. That scared the shit out of me as well. But no, I do know what you mean. I do know what you mean. Like there is a hard standards to balance where like I respect that Will's character. He doesn't want Caesar to be seen as a human, but like you said, dude, perfectly like an equal. But yeah, like I do agree with you. I do agree with you. Like there is a bit of a mismatch there, I suppose.
Also, I did write these 3 months ago. So I have another point. I don't even know what it means. Like when did you watch this film? Like how recently?
It was a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks ago. As well.
Okay, maybe you'll know what I'm trying to say from this because I watched this 3 months ago. In the previous franchise, the apes had been enslaved. They had a reason to revolt, but here, once they've freed themselves from captivity, any further act of violence should be condemned.
That's a
I
good point.
suppose
That's a good point.
because the film ends with them running into the San Francisco forest, and then that's where it picks up in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Where they just want to be secluded as intelligent apes who run their own civilization. So, I feel like
It's a really good point.
I feel like revenge. You know, I don't feel revenge was necessary, at least for Caesar, because he's meant to be like the morally righteous leader of the group.
That's such a good point, buddy. That's such a good point. And one thing I had similarly noted is sort of how I really respected Caesar in the sense that he doesn't want humans to kill apes. Sorry, he doesn't want apes to kill humans. Sorry, and that's sort of like a nice counterbalance with ape shall not kill ape, but also ape shall not kill human. But no, I do agree with you. I think even if the apes aren't killing the humans, any act of violence is probably quite unnecessary. And the film does deal with animal cruelty in a way that the other Apes films really haven't, and that's sort of, I suppose, it's shown with like Tom Felton's character, and he's sort of a bit of an asshole, to be honest, throughout the film. And it's an interesting point, because I think there could definitely is an argument to feel sympathy for the humans throughout this reboot franchise. Should we feel bad for the humans because of what happened with the pandemic, and there's a pretty much a mass genocide or something close to that, or should we feel bad for the apes because of how they've been persecuted and treated? And it's a tough one, because I think you're right, dude. I think you can definitely see both sides here.
hmm And Matthew, in this film, this is definitely the most human populated of the three films. And I've sort of said before when we talked about Disney films that I sort of feel difficult. I find it difficult to relate to non-human characters in film. Aliens who are like humanoid, I sort of can do that. But when it comes to animals, even like personified or anthropomorphized
Yeah,
ones, I still sort of struggle a bit.
yeah.
So how do you think this film sort of ranks amongst the other two? Like, when
That's a
you're
good
taking
point.
into account like its human presence versus like the presence of the apes,
Yeah, because
which are more prevalent in the next two.
in this film, like you said, it's very much 70% human rather than 70% ape, and with the other films. But it's really funny you mention that, Callum, because I remember when we reviewed The Good Dinosaur, you had said a similar point, in the sense that because it was like an anthropomorphized creature, you felt less um, empathy with the character, and you couldn't relate to them as much as maybe like a Mulan or an Aladdin or something to that degree. So no, I do agree with you, dude. I do agree with you. And strangely, like I think out of the three films, this film has the most charm and is the one that I remember the best. And I think it's the most memorable. But I don't know if it's the best film. I don't know if that makes any sense. But
No,
like
definitely, like,
in a
yeah,
way, what are we going to say there, dude? Go ahead.
like I think it's visually the brightest and it's the
Yeah,
least dull narrative wise. I don't think
sure.
there's a
No, I
boring
agreed.
moment
Agreed.
where in my opinion there would be in the next two. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it's the best film, but it might be the one that as you said, I find most charming.
Yeah, in a weird sense, like it might be my favorite, but I can agree it's not the best, if you know what I mean. Like,
Oh
um,
yeah, definitely.
yeah, for sure. And I think the pacing of this film is what's so good as well. Compared to the other two, especially the third. I think the third one has an issue with pacing. But we'll get into that later. But no, I think the pacing in this is phenomenal, and it probably has one of my favorite scenes in the reboot trilogy with when Caesar finally speaks for the first time, which is so powerful. It's so well done, and it's probably one of my favorites in the entire Apes franchise, to be honest.
Do you think that moment is diluted by the fact that we've seen the previous films and the sort of the power of speech and the eloquence of the apes is actually a lot higher in those films?
It's so funny you say that, because I actually my favorite. I think the only moment that perhaps rivals it for me isn't actually when an ape speaks. It's when Nova speaks for the first time. I think that's actually a really powerful moment from her character, because she's sort of a mute human who doesn't have full intellectual capability as Taylor does. And when she sees Taylor die, or well, it was when she sees Taylor, I think he dies before her. Um, when she finally speaks, I think that's an incredible moment, and I think it is sort of maybe mirrored here in a little in the sense as well, because we see that Caesar's been mute for the whole film, but he finally speaks. But I don't know. I do agree with you. It could be slightly diluted, yeah, for sure. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's not as powerful a moment, especially because this film is sort of it's sort of like a loose reboot of Conquest of
Sure.
the Planet of the Apes.
Hmm.
The fourth film in the previous franchise. So I feel like a lot of this material we have seen before. This is just sort of the beginnings of what that results in. The Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is like this universe 2 years later, rather
Yeah,
than
for sure.
so it's sort of like the middle ground between Rise and Dawn. That middle ground that we never actually see. Where sort of slaves, where sort of the apes are enslaved, but they do have intelligence.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Dave.
At least to some degree by that point. So yeah, I don't think it was as fresh this watch as when I first watched it, because it didn't feel as impactful because I
Yeah.
felt I'd seen it before.
Yeah, that's a great point, Matt. That's a great point. And actually, I think one thing I really will commend this film on is how it introduces one of my favorite ape side characters in the orangutan. I think he might be called Maurice. I'm not sure if that is right,
He
but
is,
the
yes.
orangutan, and he's
Yeah.
actually he's actually quite a sweet character, and I don't think he speaks until the third film. I think.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
no, he's one of my favorites, to be honest. And like we were sort of saying earlier, like the fact that the apes or most of the apes are mute for the entire film, almost, or 90% of it, it's a testament to one, the motion capture work, but also the performances of Andy Serkis and co. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, I fully agree. I would say Maurice is probably my favorite character after, well, my favorite ape character in general, probably.
Mhm.
Who would you say your favorite character in this film is? Human.
I actually quite like Will's dad, because I remember watching that actor in like Third Rock from the Sun when I was a kid, and he was great. And I think it's John Lithgow, just Lithgow maybe.
Yeah.
He's actually really funny, and I think he's a good friend of Joseph Gordon-Levitt as well from that show. So no, he was actually my favorite character. I felt quite bad for him. What about you, mate?
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's sort of tragic every moment where he sort of loses himself. Where he crashes the car, and he doesn't realize where he is, and then when he slowly starts to uh you know when his mental descent
Deteriorate.
occurs, after taking the cure, and then when he eventually dies, it is tragic because you grow to love that character so much.
It is. I don't know. It really is. You can really sort of sympathize with that character for sure. And no, I do. I actually really like James Franco and James Franco's character as well. There's not really a human character I dislike. Although when Brian Cox is on screen, I just keep seeing like William Stryker. To be honest, I think it's a very similar
Yeah.
sort of role. But no, he's serviceable. He's fine. He's good.
Do you have anything further to say on the film, or would you like to go into ratings?
I'll go into ratings, bro. If you've got nothing else to say, what would you give it?
So I agree with you. I think this is the most charming of the three. It's not the best constructed film of the three, I don't think. I think structure wise, it's the best paced probably.
Hmm.
There's not a dull moment, but there isn't much substance because it's really just an introduction into what their vision was of this ape civilization, which comes into life in Dawn. So it's
Sure.
really just a movie of establishment. Do you think this movie is necessary, or do you think with a bit of exposition they could have kicked off the franchise with Dawn?
It's weird because I think you definitely go into Dawn, and because they just disregard the human characters so well in a way that actually works for the narrative, I think you probably could just not watch this film, ignore it. But I think the fact that you do watch it and you see that ape journey from the beginning, I think it really adds to it. But likewise, I think this film would sort of, I think the films would also probably better work in the sense that Dawn should have come out first, then we see War, and then we see Rise as a prequel, given that War did so well. I think if maybe this film was the latest one to come out, I think there would definitely be a future for this franchise. But I suppose that still remains. But I definitely, like you said, I think you could probably go in and like not just disregard this film. What about you, mate? What do you think?
Yeah, because I think every important moment that occurs in this film is referenced through dialogue in the sequel. I
Yeah,
think if you added like two lines of dialogue, the when Caesar sees the video of James Franco, like signing home to him, if he just said, who is that, and he said my father, then you immediately know he was raised by humans, and then humans betrayed him, or he went against. Like
sure.
you don't need every question to be answered. So I feel like the universe could have easily been established with Dawn. but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make me like this film less, even though I don't feel it's necessary. So I had a lot of fun with it. I think the writing's great and all the actors are great. It's a revolutionary step for CGI, even though I don't really find it as charming as I did in the originals with the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So I would give it an admirable 7.5 out of 10.
That's awesome, dude, for sure. And like going back to the sort of point about James Franco's character not being in the second and third installments, I actually quite, in the sense that obviously I would have loved to see the continuation of Will and Caroline's relationship in the second and third, but I in a weird way, I kind of like the mysteriousness behind his absence in that second film. It kind of makes it more haunting, and in a weird way, I think even though the idea of this film is for the apes to become more human-like, I actually think they become more animalistic throughout the two films, the two further films, in the sense that they want to be excluded and live a more animalistic lifestyle in the jungle, in the forest. So I don't know. I thought it was quite interesting. But for this film, love it. It's one of my favorite films growing up throughout, like going from like teens and stuff. And yeah, great CGI, great performances. I have a nice nostalgia with it, so it probably impacts the rating. So I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
Oh wow,
I know.
that
I
is
know. I always
high
overrate things
roller.
here on the channel. I know. But I suppose now we should go into Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. These films are such a tongue twisters, aren't they? They're so the title's always so long. But no, Dawn of
Yeah,
the Planet of the
we'll
Apes.
just say Dawn and War.
Dawn and War,
We
yeah.
don't need to. Yeah, I feel like we've said it enough times at this
For
point.
sure, for
And
sure.
I don't know about you, but I knew going in that I liked this film, but I still felt that I had to force myself to watch it. And
I
this is
get
sort
you.
of the same case as with Bill and Ted Face the Music. I knew I would probably enjoy it, but I don't know. It just felt like a massive chore having to put it on and watch it.
No, I get you,
This
man.
and
Okay.
much more War, because I knew that War was coming. I was just like, oh, I have to
No,
sit
I
through
get
this
you.
one and then the second one.
I get you, man. I get you. Like it's sort of a similar relationship to how I would view sort of a lot of character piece movies, where like Joker, in the sense that I really don't want to have to rewatch Joker again, but it's such a good movie, but it just has no rewatchability to it. It's sort of similar ones with these. Like they're so good, like that, but likewise, it's quite a long film to watch because it's sort of a character study of Caesar. But yeah, my first note here is exposition done right. I actually think the opening scene's actually really smart and quite haunting to see the impact. And this film sort of goes off left field about this like pandemic, a pandemic, and sorry for just that. I just want my memories about
Yeah.
like a pandemic, and it is quite jarring. It's quite haunting, and the movie kind of feels like a reboot of a reboot. But I do think it works in a way. Where's your head at with that one, mate? Do you like it?
Yeah, there is a disconnection between I think Rise and Dawn. They feel like, as we said, the universe probably could have been established with this film, and I think that that's a credit to that opening montage, because I feel like that establishes the world so much even better than the entire film did, that I think this easily could have been the start of the franchise. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the opening is pretty grim considering the current state of the world, and I think that sort of uh, idea was present throughout the entire film, where anytime they mentioned virus or pandemic, I sort of like winced,
Yeah, oh, I know.
just because it is sort of hard to hear how bad, something like that can be.
For
I did
sure.
the maths on, because they say that 1 in 500 people are still alive, and I calculated that that's around 14 million people. Do you think
Wow.
total societal collapse would have occurred if 14 million people were still alive? Like, do you think that they could have still met up and cobbled together? Because I did some research into the population of the UK. I think if you just all bundle into England and start up England again,
Mhm.
like I think you get society up and running.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It depends because those people are so spread out across the world. I think maybe society would collapse, but yeah, in the sense that like if you all huddled together and teamed up, you probably would be okay. But it's weird because this film sort of suggests that like there are sort of thousands of these sort of little groups, clusters of humans across America, because we see like Gary Oldman is sort of leading this colony in San Fran. And I don't know, it's sort of I always in apocalypse movies you have to balance the realism between sort of the sci-fi, how many people to be left alive in a pandemic to go for. So you said it's like, was it like 499 out of 500 are dead, which is that's pretty jarring as well. And it like you said, it is really fitting in these times. Like, it's sort of, obviously our pandemic's not on the scale of that, thank God, but it still like hits home like shit. Like, some of these sci-fi movies aren't exactly a million miles away. It's just sort of scary.
Yeah, it is a scary thought. And we've talked about speech. Speech is a massive motif throughout all of these films. It was massive in the originals, and then the big moment in Rise where Caesar says no. That speech has always been a massive part of this franchise. But I really don't like how they handle speech in this film, because I really think they play fast and loose with their restrictions on speech. One, Koba shouldn't be able to speak at all because he was born without having like Caesar was a second generation
Yeah.
ape of that serum. His
Yeah.
mother was given that,
Genetically, yeah.
so he was born with the intelligence. He was born with the evolution that came with that. And really the mist that he pours at the end of Rise, that gives intelligence to the other apes, should only give them intelligence. It shouldn't have mutated their vocal cords or anything. So
Yeah.
pretty
No,
much
that's a really good point, actually.
anyone of that generation shouldn't be able to speak, and Caesar should be. Fuck. Sorry.
You're okay. You're all right.
Anyone of that generation shouldn't be able to speak at all, and Caesar should actually be able to speak more. He speaks very, he speaks, a few words in not full sentences. But I think that the shocking thing about the original franchise wasn't that the apes could speak; it was their eloquence. It was how well they could speak.
Yeah. It's really, yeah, it's a really good point. 'Cause this film sort of toes the line. They don't want the apes to be really sophisticated and intelligent because, like, I suppose in that sense, they would just be unbeatable. You know what I mean? But it's kind of weird. Like, throughout these films, the one maybe criticism I'd say, like, I'm kind of unsure what the boundaries are here, because we see that all of the apes, well, 99% of them, I would imagine, understand sign language to a degree. But then it kind of gets me thinking, like, where are these apes learning sign language from if humans have been extinct or nearly extinct for these years? Were all of these apes like taught by humans? It kind of makes me think, like, what's going on here. But I don't know. I think apes using sign language is a fitting development if from the filmmaker's point of view, if they didn't want to make all of them speak. But I do know what I mean. Like, certain apes like Koba, and they shouldn't probably be able to speak at all.
And also, the end of Rise, obviously everyone who was tested on in the lab that Caesar came from has been given this, an intelligence boost, and then all the apes that Caesar gave that intelligence boost to at the end of the film had that, and then since then they've had their offspring.
For sure.
They've amassed this big civilization of hundreds of apes through them having children and then passing those genes on. So it's just a question of, like, how did, say, a character like Bad Ape from War get the intelligence if he didn't get it, through his genes or through experimentation? Because they say that he's not a part of Caesar's tribe, but Caesar's tribe is comprised of every single ape that was given that intelligence.
That's a good question.
Boost.
That's a good
so
point.
I actually don't understand how that character is able to do that, because it's not like humans. Because it's not like humans would now risk giving that serum to new apes, because that serum is what caused the virus, and that's their biggest fear.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I actually didn't consider that, actually, to be honest with you, too. Yeah, like, because it sort of seems like the only intelligent apes are from the experiments within Will's company. So it kind of makes you think, like, how many of them are there? Like, surely there's like apes who, like Bad Ape, for example, who didn't come from Caesar's tribe, how are they be able to speak? So that's a really actually good plot hole there, actually, to be honest with you. I think when we go into war, there is a lot of characters in that sort of feel unnecessary, maybe, to a degree. And I actually really like Bad Ape, but he probably, if he wasn't in the film, I probably wouldn't feel any different, to be honest. But I know it's a really good point. It's a really good point. And like, one thing I wanted to ask you, mate, we sort of see in this film, we see that there's a villain for one of the first times here in Koba, and I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think of that? Because from my perspective on it is, I think it's a really fitting development to see Caesar get challenged within his tribe. But likewise, like there's no real suspense in it. We know who the villain is straight away, and even from his aesthetic, even from aesthetically, he's designed to look like a villain. If you know what I mean, in the same sense to how the Disney villains are characterized by their look. But no, I have to say, I thought this was a good development for the character, for the franchise. Like, what are your thoughts on Koba and that inclusion?
Yeah, I think it was great to actually, be able to provide a character that sort of united the two factions against one foe.
Sure.
Because sort of in the originals, it was usually, I mean, let's be honest, like George Taylor is absolutely the villain of the originals.
Yeah.
He's a
Yeah,
dickhead.
for sure.
He like kills a bunch of apes and then he blows up their planet. Like
He's a
he is
dick.
the villain.
Yeah.
And I think that this film was smart in recognizing who its audience is.
Oh yeah.
It
Oh
shouldn't
yeah.
vilify like, especially after only 1 in 500 humans are left. At this point, I think the film was smart to not vilify the entire human race.
I
By
agree.
saying all of these survivors are the villains of the film. So I thought it was fresh and interesting to see one of the apes. Sort of. I mean, we even saw the beginnings of that in Koba's violent nature in the original. Because from memory he's the one who kicks the helicopter off the bridge, killing the
I think
killing
so.
the
I think so.
the owner of the company. So we that was sort of well established and it didn't come out of nowhere. And yeah, I agree with you. I really enjoyed that.
No, absolutely, bro, absolutely. And one thing I definitely will commend this film on is how much of a level up it is in both CGI and like cinematography. Like there's some fantastic shots in there, and I really love the shots of especially Koba, on like the American flag and the ape on the tank. Like it's really great stuff, and it sort of feels so different from the first film Rise. But I actually really appreciate it for that. Like I think a lot more time went into this film. Um, Even though it might not be my favorite, I can definitely appreciate like the levels of production and effects here. Like it's flawless in my opinion. Like it's so good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And we've talked about sort of the primary villain of the film. But I've sort of said they didn't vilify the entirety of the human survivors, but there is one in particular that we're sort of meant to clearly despise, which is Carver. Uh, and I watched Dawn this morning, so I sort of expected myself to have forgotten who I was talking about. So just to remind myself, I had written in brackets "human dickhead." But I was very surprised, whenever he's told to leave, because the apes find his gun. I was surprised that he sort of went like kicking and screaming because I would have thought that he'd be thrilled to
Grateful.
be away from
Oh
the apes if
yeah,
he hates them so much.
for sure, for sure. And you know the guy who is John Connor in Terminator Genesis. What's his name again? Who's in this?
Jason Clark.
Jason Clark. I actually think he's very good in this, to be honest with you. I think he's pretty good. And I think he sort of does well in this film to present sort of like the grizzled post-apocalyptic survivor in the similar sense to how, Viggo Mortensen in The Road did and stuff like that. I know he's incredible. And I really like the direction this movie went down, even though it's extremely different from any other Apes film we've seen pretty much, especially from Rise as well. But part of me would have loved to see Franco in this environment just to see their relationship there. I know I do appreciate the shot of Caesar, like watching the old video camera footage of him. It's quite sweet, but I would have loved to see him here, but it's a pity.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think Jason Clark may well be my favorite human character within this entire franchise. I mean, really, we only have three primary ones in this entire franchise. It's James Franco, Jason Clark, and Woody Harrelson, and we're meant to hate Woody Harrelson, and James Franco invents the virus that kills
Yeah,
499 out of 500 humans. So
sure.
really, retroactively, we should despise that character, for having like the hubris to believe that he could, extend life in the way that he could. I
I
mean,
know.
he had very admirable intentions, but retroactively, it's sort of a cautionary tale of science where where we really should fear what we don't understand. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, do you think that is the message? Like, do you think that it's that we should fear what we don't understand, or do you think it's the opposite?
Callum, it's so funny you mention that because with the whole happenings of the world at the minute, with the creation of the vaccine, it kind of makes you wonder like other vaccines take years to get in to be made into production, and this one's been rolled out in like months. So it kind of makes me wonder like, I hope to God like nothing loved that like the events of this film happened. But the side effects of that, it's kind of like it is sort of scary as well, like to see sort of like the
Yeah,
untested
just
nature of
putting it out
things.
there. We're not anti-vaxxers. We're putting that out there
We
though.
are, yeah, no, we're not anti-vaxxers at all. Absolutely not. But no, this film does sort of put into perspective like the fear of the unknown for sure. And then a similar point to that, like we were sort of saying, it does sort of toe the line between, do you sympathize with the humans who have been nearly wiped out, with the apes who have been persecuted? So it's a tough line to toe. But I think this film sort of balances when in the sort of sense that you can side with two sides. You can side with like Jason Clarke and Gary Oldman's characters, or you can side with the Caesar and his tribe. It's a really it's a very balanced movie in that respect.
And I think the ending showdown of the film is very satisfying because it sees Caesar actually you know acknowledge that Koba has actually betrayed the concept of being an ape, because being an ape isn't about your biology. It's about who you are, and your commitment to that tribe.
Yeah, for
That they
sure.
basically in war, they basically elect Nova as an honorary ape because she embodies what they view as their values. So to make that distinction where he was able to kill Koba because he didn't view him as an ape, ethically, uh, and he didn't meet his criteria of what an ape was. And
Yeah.
I thought that was a good distinction to make, where he was able
Oh,
to
for sure.
kill Koba with that
Absolutely.
justification.
Yeah, that scene is probably the most sci-fi and action based out of every scene in the trilogy. But I think it's actually quite fitting, and the CGI is great, and it's very compelling viewing, and it's a very we've talked a lot about here in the channel about movies that have lackluster third acts, and where like the final battle between the two counterparts isn't exactly a great payoff. But I think here it actually is. It actually is, and especially when we sort of see that Caesar has been nearly killed, and his trust has been lost within the tribe. It does pay off, mate. It absolutely does. It absolutely does.
And Matthew, this film's directed by Matt Reeves, director
Yeah,
of the Batman. And does this film make you excited for that film?
it absolutely does. It absolutely does. It's impossible for me not to be excited by the Batman, especially with the trailer footage that we've seen. And it's weird because in a sense, like you could definitely tell it's a different director from the first one. But in the sense, like I think tonally it matches with the Batman perfectly. Sort of like a dark, brooding character in Caesar as well. And I think he definitely knows how to shoot a film, to be honest with you. So it makes me super excited for that. And I just can't wait for that film, man. What about you, dude?
This film is really really well filmed, but it's so dull. Like this film is like unbelievably boring. In parts, where the middle section of the film is it's a real drag, and
Yeah,
I'm
I'd
just
agree with
concerned,
that.
having
Yeah, I'd
having
agree.
seen the Batman.
Hmm.
I think before I'm excited for the Batman, I think I need to see some dialogue, because I
Yeah,
mean people sort of talked a lot about the Batman trailer, but really there's only one good moment in that that actually proves that that this is something to be excited for. And it's really the scene where Batman like pummels the gang
yeah.
member.
Hmm.
That is by far the best part of that trailer. But, it's nearly dialogue free. So
Yeah.
I think we need to prove that he can film dialogue, because these films are you know like this film is nearly a silent film. I would say at least 50% of the
Oh
film
yeah.
is
Big time.
is is dialogue free. So that sort of concerns me for the Batman, because I sort of like sort of a moral discussion when it comes to Batman. Because he's sort of all about his code of ethics.
Yeah, no, I think that concern's definitely justified, to be honest, dude. And especially because we sort of said the lack of humans in this film, and also the third one, which is directed by Matt Reeves, like it is a little concerning, because even though the dialogue shown in the following two films, like it is pretty good, like it kind of makes me worry that like his experience with dialogue, like is the reason why he's not having more human characters, is because he doesn't feel confident in shooting a scene or involving humans, or knowing how to construct that scene. So that's a little bit of a concern. But apart from that, like hopefully the dialogue in the Batman's good. Hopefully the characters are well developed, and as long as it remains faithful to the character and we can have those ethical discussions, I hopefully have seen no reason to worry. But I do think your concern is justified with the definitely the absence of human characters in here. It definitely, I think that your comment about it being a mute film is it's such a good point, because it is pretty much, to be honest. It is very very quiet.
do you have anything further on this film, or do you want to go into ratings?
I don't. What would you give it out of 10, dude?
So I think that this film is definitely conceptually more fresh and original than the first film. You know, the first film is essentially, as I said, a rehash of Conquest. So this is the closest thing that we get to something new, because War for the Planet of the Apes is also like Battle for the Planet of the Apes, you know, the fifth film in the previous franchise. So this is the one that feels the freshest, but it's probably also the one where there's the least amount of character development, and it's probably the dullest. But I think Jason Clarke is a really bright presence, you know, even more so than James Franco. I think he's my favorite human character in the entire franchise, and you know, I think he really brought it up to a certain level that made me really enjoy it. You know, I would say I probably enjoy it a little less than Rise, but I think I recognize that it's a better film, so I would give it an 8 out of 10.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. You know, and a lot of your points there, buddy, have actually changed my rating. In my notes here, I've given it a 10, but some of the points you've made, to be honest, mate, have definitely downgraded it for me, and I do agree with you.
I don't want to do that
No,
though, you
no,
know,
no.
because
Like, don't feel
yeah.
don't feel bad at all. Like, it's
No,
still a
but I
great
mean,
film.
you know, even like I don't want it to affect your viewing or anyone else's. You know, we sort of talk about, you know, you hear a lot about movie critics sort of like foisting their opinion on other people, but like we're really just having a chat because like we would
Between
do this
us, yeah.
otherwise. You know,
Oh
we're just
yeah,
recording
yeah.
it and putting it up like for whoever gives a shit. But like,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
if no
because
one
we
gives
did
a
this
shit,
before.
like
We did
doesn't
this
really
before.
matter.
We would have talked about it in nearly this detail before the before the podcast. Or like the podcast, you know,
Yeah,
we be talking like this anyway.
because I think there are critics who sort of like you know, they like make fun of other people's opinions. You know, they're like, oh, you enjoyed this film, you're a dumb dickhead. But obviously we can't say that when we enjoyed like Dora and the Lost City of Gold as much as we did. You know, we can never judge
Yeah,
anyone's
no, I
taste in
know.
music,
Yeah,
taste in movies or taste in anything.
yeah. No,
You
it's
know,
a
so
good
we're really
point,
just
mate.
sharing ours, but we're
It's
not
weird.
deriding other people's.
It's so funny you say that because I remember like when I was like 15, 16. I think I don't know if you were the same, you probably were, but like I used to watch movies all the time. Like as soon as Chris Stuckman uploaded a film I was interested in or wanted to see, I would click on that. I haven't watched the movie review in months. Like I've watched the movie in
Yeah,
ages. And I think maybe because I'm more comfortable now, like, like having my opinion altered in the sense like, you know, I'm not too bothered about what other movie reviewers would have to say about a film because at the end of the day, it's my enjoyment that matters. And as long as we can have this discussion and like people don't feel like we're shoving opinions down people's throats, which we definitely are not trying to do, like I'm happy. So that's the reason why I haven't watched a Chris Stuckman review, a Jeremy Jahns review, a Flick Pick, a Grace Randolph. You know, I don't watch movie reviews anymore, or as near not nearly as much as I used to. I probably think you're the same, are you?
yeah, I probably watch, you know, the odd Beyond the Trailer one, but pretty much if I know that we're going to cover a film, you know, on our channel, I don't listen to that review before we do it, and I don't listen to it ever because
Yeah.
I don't want, you know, I don't want to know other people's opinions, you know, because we've shared ours, and you know, if sort of like, you know, we have a lot of friends who love films as well, so I love having a chat with
Oh
them.
yeah, for
But you know,
sure.
really online, I'm not that interested.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate, for sure. So going back to my rating, I think this film it's a really difficult one for me to rate because at the same time I both love it, but do agree with you in the sense that the middle has nothing really going on. So I probably have to downgrade it from a 10 to a 9. Although that being said, it has one of my favorite scenes in the film when Caesar is watching the old camera footage of James Franco's character because this film I think came out a few years after that film, so it was a little bit of time before then, and it's a very apt moment in the film, and I'm glad they had that little bit of Franco. They didn't exactly just forget about him, but no, very good film, and 9 out of 10 from me. But shall we move on to the third and final film of today, and possibly the most critically acclaimed of the three, War?
Which shocks me, you know, because you know, had some sort of like, you know, Mandela effect, you know, in my brain where I believe that this was poorly received because of its, you know, let's be honest, terrible pacing. You know, this film
Oh yeah.
drags massively. I
Hmm.
think it's a really great film, but yeah, it drags massively. You know, and I thought for some reason in my memory this was like slaughtered by critics, and then I went on Wikipedia and it was like it was, you know, critically acclaimed, which shocked me. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
obviously, you know, the effects being incredible is a given, but the rest of it, you know, I thought really fell down quite a bit. You know, not in comparison to the other two, because I do think this is perhaps like the highest quality film. You know, but it just felt like it could have it could definitely do with some editing.
Yeah, I think one thing I'll say about this film is I think this is such a missed opportunity. I think it's such a fantastic film, but this film really had the opportunity to be like one of the best sci-fi films of like the last 30 years, to be honest. I think it's that good, or the potential of it is that good. Although, one thing it's crazy to think, dude, this film came out 3 years ago. Like it feels like yesterday when it first came out to me anyway. It's like 2017, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm
Crazy.
like the absolute opposite. Yeah, it was
Really?
it was 2017, but I was like, this came out 8 years ago. Like,
Really? That's
in my mind,
interesting.
yeah,
That's
like
cool. That's interesting.
massively.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
funny. Yeah, that's cool.
I just feel like, in the last 3 years, maybe, when you because I mean, when I saw this, I was 15 years old and I'm 18 now, and I think in that period of time, you do a lot of growing up, so it feels like I've
Oh, you
sort
do,
of
yeah, for sure.
lived a life in that very short interim,
Hmm.
and so I think it feels like decades ago for me.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. That's interesting. And I'd sort of mentioned at the start of the podcast about the Chris documentary for this film and how he thought it was a masterpiece. And for me, like I think it definitely has the potential to be a masterpiece. I'm not sure if it is for me. And I remember when this film came out about like there's a lot of mention of like the Holocaust symbolism in there and stuff like that. It's sort of it's weird because it feels very different from the second film as well, like sort of how the second film felt different from the first film, because this film, like, there isn't much of a war until the final act, and I think it's definitely the most sort of character study based film of the three, and I think it has some of the most emotional scenes for sure, especially towards the end. So I'm looking forward to getting into it with you, mate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with the character study part, because this is probably the film where we see Caesar alone the most. The first film
Yeah.
he's being raised by James Franco, and then there's sort of in the middle of the second act, start of the third act. He's in the animal sanctuary. Where that's sort of where he spends the most alone time in that film. But in the second one, he's never really left alone. It's like 50. It's like 60-40. Apes to humans. But in this
Yeah.
film, the main human character is Woody Harrelson. He's maybe in like 3 or 4 scenes,
Hmm.
at the most. He has very limited screen time, and a lot of the screen time left over is dedicated to Caesar being alone, and just having to contemplate his actions, and but whether what he did with Kobo was right, and sort of the moral implications of that decision that he made in the previous film. So yeah,
Hmm.
I definitely agree that this is the one that comes closest to a character study, because he is given that sort of moment to breathe and be by himself,
For sure, Callum.
as
Yeah.
a single character in that screen time.
For sure. I think the point you said about it being poorly paced is definitely as a result of the absence of human characters, for sure. Like, I think the human character dialogue in the first two, although limited, it did add a lot of well paced, a lot of good pacing and stuff to the film. But here, because Woody Harrelson's character is such an arsehole, and also because he's not really in the film that much, the pacing and the sympathy you have for him, it's not there really. I think it misses the mark.
I definitely agree. And this film sort of like kicked off with a bad start, because it made me just immediately resent it a little bit, because I don't remember the last time I had to read a full paragraph on tech, a full paragraph of text on screen.
Yeah,
Aside from like
yeah,
the opening crawl of Star Wars, but even that, you're reading a few sentences at a time, and it's moving and it's
yeah.
dynamic and it's colorful.
This one's like a
Here it was just
PowerPoint.
tiny, tiny little letters, like really far away, and just like lines and lines and lines, and it didn't give you enough time to finish it. It was
Mhm.
it just irritated me from the beginning. Also,
Yeah.
like my TV is like not that small. It's like 22 inches. I could not read it. Like I had to like
Yeah.
stand up and look at it.
I know.
I couldn't read it from quite a reasonable distance.
Mhm.
And that sort of just kicked off with a bad start.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, like, I think that the scene after that, though, for me, it makes up for it with like the battle in the forest. I think that's so good, and it sort of interests, involves the interesting concept of apes that are working for humans, which I think actually is quite interesting. And I think, like we sort of said, that these films are very good at like developing plots and stuff and going in different directions. I think this is a very innovative and creative one, because it sort of made me think, oh, is there a reason why these apes have moved to the human side? Like, were they like followers of Kobo, or did they just were they forced to do it out of slavery? It's a really interesting question. So I really like that concept. What about you, mate? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting to begin with, and I was sort of contemplating the motives, and it is revealed later on that the at least the apes that are called donkeys by the Alpha Omegas. They were dissidents who were followers of Koba.
Yeah.
But that that really doesn't connect for me, because surely if Koba's agenda was to destroy humanity to protect apes, then his followers would rather side with Caesar than with the
Yeah,
humans.
that's a good point. It's a really
Because
good point.
if they resent Caesar because he killed Koba, surely their hatred for humans can't be,
Hmm.
like surely their hatred for Caesar can't be more than their hatred for humans.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And like the film, I think this film out of the three, it definitely makes you hate the human characters the most. I think unquestionably for me anyway, just because of the sheer persecution that the apes suffer from. And I suppose that's where the Holocaust symbolism comes in there as well. Like what are your thoughts on that sort of adaptation of that tragedy?
Well, I sort of suppose I didn't look that deeply into the film. I was sort of I would say this the film I paid the least amount of attention to. So if there were messages or a deeper meaning, I don't think I really gleaned that as much with this film. Uh, you know
That's
I
fair. Yeah.
I don't know how fair a comparison it is, at least by the film, because in this instance it wasn't Caesar who started the war, but it was the apes who started the war. And obviously this film, there is a very easy comparison, with the concentration camps of that time
Yeah.
and the concentration camps here with the apes having to do the work. But in this instance, the apes did start the war. Like
Yeah,
how,
that's
how,
a
how
good
do you
point.
how do you feel that
You know,
changes the situation?
yeah, like I think I don't know if you'd agree. Like I think Caesar definitely has to take a bit of responsibility for both the deaths of innocent humans and apes, to a degree as well. I think that's probably adds to the complexity of his character as well. And no, I do, yeah, no, I do agree. I think it does change it as well, and it definitely adds sort of a darker layer to Caesar's character as well. But
Yeah,
that being said, I suppose that's why the film is called War of the Planet of the Apes, because at the end of the day, I suppose it is, and it's also like a war within Caesar as to who he wants to side with overall. So, because in this situation, you definitely can't sit on the fence from Caesar's
yeah.
perspective.
Because admittedly, he isn't responsible for the start of the war, and he does show mercy. But do you think he really does enough to stop the war?
I
He
don't think
says,
so. I don't think
because
so.
I mean, he says there's sort of an opening piece of dialogue, at the start of the film, where he says, I did not start this war, but the apes will fight, but I'll fight to protect apes,
Yeah,
or something to that effect. But they make the plans to move, to the desert later in the film, and they achieve that by the end of the film. But if he had decided, that there's been, I think, 5 years between Dawn and this film, and I really think he either could have made that decision sooner, or you know, I think he could have done more to stop the war. Like,
100%.
do you agree with that?
Oh, I do, mate, for sure. And like maybe that's probably one of the reasons why some of the donkey apes, as they're referred to, probably might have left his side because they didn't really feel confidence in him as a leader. But like, I think it's weird because I think from Caesar's perspective, like he definitely does get the payoff by the end. I think he's definitely somewhat of a martyr throughout the film, especially for the apes. And that's one aspect that maybe sort of confused me in the sense that we see that the colonel, like, he does keep Caesar alive, but in that sense he's sort of fueling the agenda against him by making him a living martyr. So I kind of thought that was a confusing element from him, like just kill him, mate. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I don't know.
I think that's really less a bold decision by the film, and one that they just had to make for convenience, because I think they just recognized that they needed Caesar to live to be in the final battle, and but they needed, like, it's just narrative convenience. It's not actually a strong decision they've made, or they're not like, oh, the colonel is stupid for keeping him alive. It's just a narrative coincidence. Like, it's just something that needed to
Yeah.
happen in the narrative. It's
No,
sort
I
of
agree.
seen. I've recently been watching the original Star Wars films.
Oh,
And
really?
I was watching Return of the Jedi, and when the rebellion are like on Endor, and the Empire come onto Endor, and they're approached by all the stormtroopers and they're captured. I'm like, just kill them. Like, they're the
Yeah,
biggest
literally.
they're the biggest
Literally.
threat to your existence. Kill them. And I feel like that. I mean, obviously, you root for the hero. You don't want the hero to die. But then write a better scenario where the villains never get the upper hand to
Oh
be able
yeah,
to get the
so
chance to
true.
kill them. like, don't give the villain the chance to kill them and then not kill them. It just
That's so
it
true.
boggles my mind.
It is. Oh, it's so true, man. It's so true. And hopefully that scenario like that doesn't happen in the Batman, because I think a lot of people will be very angry.
Yeah, I mean, like, if like the Penguin like had, like Batman suspended by his feet, and he was like, oh, I could shoot you right now, or I could just like stand here and monologue. I
Yeah.
will riot.
Yeah.
I was
No,
like,
literally,
I will
yeah.
not be happy.
I know, no, for sure, man, for sure. And one thing, yeah, you mentioned the original Star Wars films. I really appreciate the snowy cinematography here, in the similar sense um, to how Empire did that, and on Hoth, and I think it's really good. Like, the cinematography in this film is amazing, and it's definitely the most well shot for me. Like, from a cinematic standpoint, like, it's so good. And obviously, like, we sort of mentioned, like, emotional moments that happen in this film as well. And I think the death of Caesar's wife and son, it is really cruel. It's devastating, and it's one of those, like, defining moments in this film, I suppose, for Caesar. And I think that's one of the scenes where the filmmaker wants you to side with him, for sure.
Yeah, and do you feel, we sort of both agreed that Jason Clarke was a really great addition to the franchise in the previous film.
Yeah.
Do you agree when I say that this is like sorely lacking the humans that were introduced in that film?
Oh yeah, big time, man, big time. Like, it really misses a human character you can sympathize or empathize with. Like, it really misses that. Like, by having Woody Harrelson being the villain, that's great, but, like, there's no counterbalance to that from a human perspective, which I think it's integral you have that in an Apes film. And especially with the original films, like, I always appreciated the humans who defended the apes and befriended the friendly apes. So it's kind of missing that in this film, but that's part of that's the luck of the draw, I suppose. Like, that's just not what Matt Reeves envisioned. So it is a pity, but luckily it didn't affect the quality too much, mate. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you said it really, really, really well. You need the dichotomy on both sides. You need good humans, bad humans, good apes, bad apes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the Dawn is probably the most superior example of that. I think that's the movie that does it best. I think here that does fall down a little, where the humans have, as you say, no other humans to sympathize with. Uh, and I said before that after seeing the originals, I feel that the experience was enhanced a bit more. And I think that that's the most prevalent here. We have the character of Nova
yeah.
reintroduced. A new version of Nova. We have the Alpha Omega Squad. Which are named after the atomic bomb from Beneath. Uh, you know, were there any others that you spotted?
Um,
There are a couple more
I remember in the
that
first film, I
are not
think
immediately springing to mind.
I think they're in the first film, Caesar's mother was called Bright Eyes, so I suppose there's a little reference there as well. But no, the film, to
Hmm.
be fair, these films, they have a lot of smart references to the old films, and I don't think the character of Bad Ape is ever referred to in the originals. I don't think so,
No,
anyway.
I don't think so. But there's the character of like Caesar's son Cornelius.
Cornelius, yeah,
Which
yeah,
is the same as as Dr. Zira's husband from the original, and then the film ends with them in the desert, which is similar to the sort of
the
desolate
landscape, yeah,
wasteland New York from the original.
yeah.
So I think the experience of this film was doubled by the fact that I had that contextual knowledge.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'm so glad we had made our way through the original films, to be honest, because I actually appreciate this film a lot more, of this franchise, this reboot franchise, so much more because of how different it is, but also the Easter eggs and the references to the old films as well. So, I've massive kudos to them, to be honest, because they could have easily just disregarded the old films, but I'm glad they sort of kept some references in there, for sure. It's always nice when they do that.
Yeah, and I think another massive motif into the connection with the originals was the idea of the power of speech that we've talked about.
Yeah,
Here, it's reversed with actually the digression of human abilities to speak. Where the simian flu now has a side effect of mutism, and that the fact that we actually have a biological explanation for that, I think, is actually really great.
I
I
agree.
really enjoyed their justification for why the humans would all be mute in the original, and it sort of makes you think that really the original posits that there's been an evolutionary period where the humans' intelligence has decreased so much that they're now incapable of human speech, whereas now, it may actually be more a case of they're like, they have all of the thoughts of a 21st century human, but they're not able to vocalize it.
Exactly. That's
They're
such a great
trapped,
point.
like, their thoughts are trapped in their own body. They've not been taught English. They've not been taught how to write. So their only option is, to just live as they are.
It's a great
And
point, dude.
it
Yeah.
sort of recontextualizes the whole thing where you think maybe they weren't unintelligent, they were just uneducated.
I think it's a really smart recontextualization of that. I think I'd really love if that was the case, to be honest. I think it really adds a nice balance and an actual motive there, rather than just saying humans are, what did I just crush there? Humans are mute. So no, I think it's smart. I really liked it, dude, to be honest with you. I thought it was great.
And then do you think with that provided context that makes that makes the apes of the original seem more cruel?
Ooh, I think there's definitely an argument for that, for sure. And I think the cruelty of the apes is sort of highlighted. Well, it's not also highlighted, but sort of mirrored in the cruelty of the colonel and in the camps that they've got there as well. It is very similar to the old films in that sense as well, just that slight mirroring. But no, I do think whenever apes film there is, that what's so great about them is that you can question the morals of anyone and everyone. You can question the morals of Caesar or Cornelius, Dr. Zira, the Colonel, anyone. So, I think that's why these songs are so good and so developed. So, no, I do agree with you, mate, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to say. Towards the end of the film, we see that I actually don't understand how Caesar died. I think he was maybe injured in an explosion, but then he somehow trekked across an entire desert, and it's when he sits down that he finally dies. That doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not completely convincing to me. Do you have any idea how he died?
I think he must have just died via just blood loss, I suppose, but he just to track across the desert and just like just died. But I like the scene where Maurice speaks. I think that's quite nice.
Well, I sort of had my issues with that scene. I think it's an incredibly pathetic death scene. Because
Yeah.
the whole importance of the power of speech was that it began with Caesar. So I feel like the last line of dialogue in this film, and potentially, well, I mean, definitely in Caesar's storyline, I feel like the last line of dialogue should be delivered by Caesar.
Yeah.
But instead they have sort of Maurice speak for him, and then he just keels over and dies.
It's a good
Like I
point.
wasn't I wasn't too jazzed about that. Like when I watched that in cinemas, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because like I didn't even
2017.
see him.
2017 was a bad year for movie deaths, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I didn't even see him get injured. I was just like, what?
What?
Wait,
I
who
know.
else
I
died in
know.
2017?
Wolverine, I suppose. That was quite lackluster looking back.
Luke Skywalker was pretty shit.
Yeah, it was pretty shit as well. Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it was quite lackluster. And the fact that these movies are so Caesar-centric, if you want to call it that, it was a bit of a letdown that he doesn't have the final. I mean, he has a final payoff. He doesn't have the final payoff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like in a franchise about his rise, like it was the rise of his apes, his Planet of the Apes,
Exactly.
and the franchise should begin and end with him. I feel
Agreed.
like
Yeah.
I feel like we really don't need to. I feel like we really don't need to explore this universe anymore. They say they have a fourth film in the works that's sort of going to respect Caesar's legacy, but it's not going to be like, uh, it's going to be in the same universe and it's going to feel like a sequel to this film, but it's not going to be a direct sequel. It's probably not going to like follow Cornelius and Maurice and stuff. But I would say let the franchise die with Caesar. I think it was a more fitting end than whatever
Oh,
they're
I
gonna
agree.
produce.
I agree. I agree completely. I think this is a good way to end it. Well, not a good way to end it, but a serviceable way to end it. It's if this was it's a sort of similar idea to how I view Daredevil season 3, in the sense of I kind of don't want a fourth season because that season 3 ending was reasonably definitive. So it's a sort of similar thing to this film where it's reasonably definitive. I wouldn't really care for another ape character apart from Caesar, to be honest with you. Maybe Maurice, but I don't think he's as compelling, to be honest. So no, I think the poetic nature of Caesar death was nice, but like you said, I would have liked to see him sort of go out in a higher note.
Yeah, I mean with Daredevil, the like Daredevil's direct moral opposite is Kingpin, and the first and third seasons have explored every conceivable storyline with those two characters,
Yeah,
and you can't introduce another character that's going to be a superior match to him. And
exactly.
if you're going to finish it on anything, finish it on that. I would love to see I think Daredevil could easily appear in other people's projects, but I think
agree.
with
Yeah.
his own, I think everything that should be explored has been explored. And I think the recent acquisition of Fox by, well, not that recent, but the acquisition of Fox by Disney has led this franchise to now be in Disney's hands. And I think Disney just do not know when to let something die.
Oh, I
You
know.
know,
I know. It's so
like
true.
the MCU should have ended with Avengers Endgame with
I
Thanos
agree.
snapping his fingers again, and that's it. There have been edits of that ending where it's just sometimes the good guys don't always win, and I feel like if they had made that powerful, awful, terrible message in like their biggest franchise that they've ever had, it would have been incredible. I mean, tragic, but incredible. And
Cinema defining. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they just don't know when to let something die. Like Toy
Yeah.
Story 4 is
Jeez.
trash.
It's so shit.
Like
I hate it.
Toy Story 3, introduces Bonnie and the infinite possibilities of what Woody will get to experience. Well, Woody and the whole gang will get to experience in the future, and it introduces the idea that anytime a child grows up, there's another child waiting to play with those characters,
Hmm.
and then Toy Story 4, spoilers, just ends up with like Woody binning off his mates and like going on the run.
I really hate that ending so
It's
much.
awful.
It's so
Like
bad. It's so
the
bad.
film itself is okay, but the ending is terrible.
Yeah, like it's. I even don't like what the. I know this is we're getting this Disney now, but who cares? It's quite a
Yeah.
similar thing to how I viewed The Incredibles too. Like, ugh, what a
I mean,
letdown that was.
I'm yeah, it was a terrible follow up, especially because we had to wait like nearly 15 years for it. But
Yeah,
I think that's recoverable with a third film.
I agree. I do agree. Yeah.
I think because if you sort of have like a massive high, then a bit of a low, and then another massive high, I think you can give a generally favorable view of that trilogy as a whole. But I think just Toy Story 4 was just
God,
it's
awful.
too low a low.
No, it
You
is.
know.
No, it is. 100%, dude. 100%. So, did you have any other points to conclude this film, or do you want to hop into ratings?
Well, just sort of as I'd referenced earlier, I think it's a great film, but the pacing is awful, and it feels like it goes on forever. Like when you were watching this, like do you like? Here's a question: do you know how long this film was? Like I
Sort
know
of
how long this film was.
two and a half, maybe. No.
Okay, we'll lock that in as your answer. How did it make you feel though?
It,
Like
ma-
what did you
it
feel?
I don't know about you, mate. It felt like something was missing, and it felt long. Like it maybe not Dawn. Well, maybe it probably even felt a bit longer than Dawn. To be honest with you, it felt really long and felt like something was missing. I don't know. What about how? What about you, mate? How do you feel?
For me, it like I'll not be hyperbolic. It felt like at least 3 hours. Like I
That's
fell
fair.
asleep
That's
halfway
fair.
through it.
Endgame
It felt
felt
like at
shorter.
least
I'll
halfway
say
through.
Endgame felt
Yeah,
shorter.
yeah. This film is actually only like 2 hours and 10 minutes long. Like it's the same
Jeez.
length as Dawn, and it does
Jeez.
not feel that
It
way at
doesn't feel
all.
that way at all. It feels so much longer. I don't know.
It was
I
painful.
don't know if that's a good thing either. Like with Endgame, I'm glad it felt long because I wanted to see so many storylines concluded and stuff. But here, it just there's something missing. But likewise, I don't know if I wanted more added because it would have been a drag even more. But I know
Yeah.
it's weird. It's a weird
I mean,
film.
I know you have yet to see this film, but Blade Runner 2049
Yeah.
felt like about 4 or 5 hours long. But I loved it so much, because it was an incredible film. It sort of dragged in places like this film. It actually it has a very similar tone, I think. Sort of this post-apocalyptic,
Hmm.
different society. It is very similar tonally. But it felt so long, but I appreciated every minute of it. This, I would say, I spent at least 10 minutes with my eyes closed, like like listening to it.
Yeah.
But then it's sort of the issue when like you hear an ape and you're like, oh, are they like like you don't know whether it's just a moment of action or whether there's important dialogue that
Yeah. I
they're
know.
using
Yeah,
sign
for
language
sure.
for. So like it's not a film where you can get away with like
No, it
closing your
isn't.
eyes. But I was
No, it
like,
isn't.
I just can't be asked.
Oh, I know what you mean, dude. I know what you mean. It's. I really do really like this film, but I do think there's something missing. Whether that's human characters, sorry, should I say more human characters or not or what? But I don't know. I think like I said at the start of this review, it misses the mark, but it's still a very good film for me. It just it's not the masterpiece as Chris Stuckman had said it was. But I don't know. Maybe he thinks differently now as well. Who knows?
Yeah, So did you wanna jump into ratings?
Yeah, let's do it. Maybe what would you give it out of 10?
Yeah, so sort of I have very similar views on it to you. That like bizarrely, I think it really drags, and there does feel like there's something like simultaneously there's something missing, but also you feel like a lot of what is there should be edited out,
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
sake of pace.
Yeah.
It feels way too long. I think it drags, but like I'm still confused because I think it is great. Like I think
Yeah,
it's
no, I'm
definitely
I'm
better
exactly
than
the same as you, mate.
I think it's
Exactly the
definitely better
same.
than Dawn. Like I think it is. I think Dawn by fans is more accepted, and then by critics this one was more accepted. But I think I actually do prefer this one. So I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. And the biggest marks I would take off it are probably the pacing and Caesar's death, which was just awful in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, I agree with pretty much everything you said, to be honest, Cal. I'd agree with you. I think simultaneously both great, but also a lot missing. It still makes me excited for the Batman completely. I think the way just this film is shot and the production value is amazing. I'm amazed it didn't win Best Visual Effects at the Oscars, to be honest with you. Absolutely amazed, because it definitely deserved it. So for me, I'd give it a 9 out of 10, same as Dawn. However, if I were going to say the best film, I would say this film, but my favorite is Rise. What about you, mate?
Did I give it a rating out of 10?
I think you give it I think you give it 8.5, did you?
This film, like I don't remember saying a number.
What would you give it if we'll give it a retroactive
Okay,
review?
yeah, yeah. You can like if I did say one, just like put in the video description, Callum's a dumb dickhead or something. But like I genuinely don't remember having said something. So I gave Rise 7.5, which I think was probably fair. And then I think I gave Dawn an 8. So I'd probably give this one an 8.5.
8.5, yeah. Fair enough. What's your favorite out of the three? I think we probably have already established it, but just to say.
I think the one I enjoyed watching the most was definitely Rise.
Hmm.
But I think definitely the best film is War. I think I
I
just
agree with
wasn't
that.
in it. I just don't think I was in it today. Like, I think if I had like you know infinite time to watch it, and I could just like, and I wasn't tired at all, because I'll probably watch Dawn at like 5 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
And then
actual Dawn.
yeah, I watched it between like 5 and 7 a.m. And then I started War, and I just couldn't stay awake any longer. Like it,
Fair. Yeah, it's a
but
long
it
film.
wasn't it wasn't what bored me. Like I was genuinely just tired. So
Yeah,
I think it is the best film of
I'd
them,
agree with
but
that.
the
Yeah,
one I enjoyed most was Rise.
I'd agree with
How,
that.
how
Mate,
do you
well,
feel?
no, 100% the same. 100% the same. Um, it's sort of weird. Like I'm a little bit sad. There's no other Apes movies to cover now. We've done them all. It's sort of like, I quite liked all these films. Like there wasn't really a stinker for me. But no, at
Yeah,
least it's been good to get another sci-fi genre sort of checked off that list.
yeah. I was gonna say this is probably the biggest. Is probably it's definitely one of the biggest live action series that we've covered. We did
Yeah, it's
Star
up
Wars,
there with
which is
Star
11
Wars. Yeah,
films,
it's up with them.
and then this is 8. So I think it's probably the second of the live action franchise that we've covered.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We finally got around to it, and I suppose shall we move on to a bit of future episode chat to see tell the viewers what pods and other videos will be coming up in the near future, mate.
Yes, so I think we're going to be kicking off talking about Disney films again. It's been a
Yeah,
long, long time.
been a while.
The last films that we talked about were like Pocahontas and Mulan. That feels like, I mean, it was about 6 months ago, I think that we talked
Was a
about those.
while. Was a
Uh,
while. Yeah.
it was ages ago. So I'm looking forward to getting back to those, especially because there's some really really fun ones to look forward to.
Oh yeah.
Although I didn't realize that. Did you know that like Bolt and like Meet the Robinsons were like Disney, like Walt Disney Animation proper? I thought it was like Disney, like the way there's like Disney Toon and
Yeah.
there's
No,
like
I
like
thought they
sub
were like.
studios.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't
thought they
realize
were
they were like Disney
DreamWorks. To be honest,
proper.
I thought they were DreamWorks. I didn't know they were Disney. They don't feel like Disney films at all.
Yeah, no, I knew Bolt was definitely. Actually, no, did I? Yeah, maybe I did think they were DreamWorks. Yeah, no, I definitely
Yeah,
didn't think
that's
they were. I
weird.
definitely didn't. I definitely thought if they were Disney, they weren't like Disney, like Walt Disney Animation Studios. So like that was a big surprise.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
not looking forward to talking about. I'm looking forward to talking about Meet the Robinsons. Have you seen it? It's
Oh,
great.
so good, so good. I love
But
it.
like
And
Bolt is
but I don't mind
like
both.
Bolt is shit
I don't
from
mind
memory.
both. the next episode of Disney is going to be a good one because they have my two favorite Disney films with Tarzan and Emperor's New Groove. So I can't wait to get into them. But also, I think we might have a stinker in there with Fantasia 2000. I'm afraid.
Oh yeah,
I
grim.
think it's going to be. And then
Isn't
what's
there
the
one?
other one? What's the other one?
There's one coming up. I don't know if it's the next episode, but there's one coming up that's called like Dinosaur
Yeah,
or something. And
that's in the next episode. Yeah, it's good.
oh
It's so
no,
good. I know, I mean, it's good.
what?
You like it. You like it. It's so
It
good.
looks like shit.
It's one of my
Like,
favorites.
but
It's so
you
awesome.
like dinosaurs? I don't.
I know, but this one, like, it's better than Good Dinosaur. It's so good. Trust me, you love it.
Did
You
you
might not
ever
love it.
see? Did you ever see as a kid like it was a movie called We're Back, and it was like animated dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, in New York.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so good, so good.
yeah. I remember from
Chef's
memory
Kiss.
loving that.
Chef's Kiss, so
That
good.
if we ever like discuss nostalgia, I would love to talk about that one. And did you ever watch Help I'm a Fish?
I did. It was good.
I would love to talk about those two films because I think it'd be a shame if I watched those and they were shit now.
Yeah,
They're
no, that's
probably
what
shit.
worries me. That's what worries me. Like, I don't want to go into the bandwagon of like Spider-Man animated series again because I know it's not good. But well, it is good, but it's also not good.
Yeah,
But yeah,
because like I have been doing a bit of like nostalgia stuff lately. You know, a few months ago I watched some of like Batman the animated series. I didn't
yeah,
like it anymore.
I know.
And
It
then
scares me.
recently I bought like a kid's book series that I read as a child, like
Oh, that's nice.
as a younger child, and it's called like The Dead Detective, and like I don't know, it's probably shit, and like because I remember it being like this sophisticated, you know, like
Sure.
thing for young adults, but it's
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's like 90 pages, like it's probably garbage.
A nostalgia pod would be fun. I would definitely. I think that'd be a funny episode.
Yeah, like
Like we
were you a
pick two or
child who
three
have like
films each.
watched a lot of like animated TV shows as a
Oh
child?
yeah, like I watched the weirdest shit ever. Like my childhood was like Doctor Who mixed with Marvel and DC, mixed with dinosaurs, mixed with everything. Like it was just loads of different things. But I think a nostalgia episode would be good. Sort of like I'd love to do a nostalgia episode on maybe like a superhero film pitches part two. Like that was one of my favorites ever. Recording that was
Yeah,
hilarious. So I think that
definitely.
those would be good. But yeah, like the next episode will be Disney, and then like we said in our Bill and Ted 3 review, we're going to be doing Rocky films, but also Christmas classics. So that's going to be fun. We'll get those out by the end of the year, and then of course we'll hopefully try to review the other films we've missed, like Tenet and Mulan and whatever. So yeah, stay tuned to the channel.
New
There's going to be a lot of
Mutants.
content. Yeah, I forgot about that one. I think everyone did. But yeah, no, there's going to be a lot of content coming over these next few months, guys. So appreciate you all. And yeah, thanks so much for today, Calm. Appreciate it. It's been good to check another movie franchise off the list, and I'll add a Planet of the Apes playlist in the playlist section for anyone who wants to watch all three
Cool.
podcasts. So yeah, it's been good fun, mate. This has been a good franchise, mate. There's not really a bad one out of the bunch.
Well,
Well,
like, do you mean of these three of the entire eight? Because I could tell you several of the entire eight that are terrible.
it's been that long since I've probably seen them, so maybe upon rewatch, maybe some of them are shit. But you
I
know,
mean, if we go through them for a quick 30 seconds, because this is sort of us capping off the entire
yeah,
franchise. So Planet of the Apes is not that great. You know, it's
the
like it's a
twist is
lot of
predictable.
Charlton
Yeah,
Heston's bad acting and shouting. He's just like running around topless, being like a murderer.
yeah,
The
that's true.
second film, it's just like a cheap rehash of the original, which ends with Taylor genociding the entire planet, and then him
Classic
being like,
Taylor.
"I'm
I'm a
a
bloody
red-blooded American
genius.
hero.
Yeah.
I'm gonna genocide everyone." And then
Oh, Taylor.
and then what the third film is actually great.
It's
That's
good.
Escape from
It's
the Planet
good.
of the Apes,
Yeah.
where the apes come from the future. Fourth film, Conquest, pretty bad.
The one I dislike the most is probably the Wahlberg one. I don't like that one that much.
Oh, really? Like, because
That's
I would say
okay. It's okay.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes is probably my least favorite, and then I was surprised with the Wahlberg one, because I'd heard it was so bad, but I was really happy that they didn't try to rehash the same twist at the end.
Yeah.
They employed like a time travel twist, but it wasn't like oh, it was Earth all along, because I think if they tried to do that a second time, it would have been pathetic.
I think it's a good intermediate between the original Charlton Heston ones and these ones. So, I definitely recommend that one for people who want to get a good mix of the two. But yeah, like they're it's sort of a weird franchise in the sense that like I think I'm not sure how much rewatchability the old ones have, whereas I think these modern three have a decent amount of rewatchability. So It's definitely been fun. Definitely been fun covering them with you, dude. And yeah, we've covered a lot of big franchises this year. So we have like Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park, Planet of the Apes.
Star
Like it's been
Wars.
fun. Star
Oh
Wars
no,
as well.
Star Wars was 2019.
Yeah. Even
But
so, like
close enough.
we've done most of them. Like we've done most of them. The only ones I can really think of is like Rocky and Star Trek and stuff. But
Godfather.
Godfather as well. Yeah. You know,
Do we
we've
have to talk about Star Trek? Like
that's gonna be a big one.
I'm just not in. Like I'm just not up for Star Trek. Like I
It's
just don't
yeah,
like
I
it.
know what you mean. I quite like the Chris Pine ones, but I haven't really seen much of the old ones to be honest with you. But no, it's and obviously of course with Wonder Woman 84 delayed till Christmas Day, we'll hopefully we'll give you that as a Christmas present, viewers. Hopefully a review of that because that's probably I'm surprised it's still coming out this year to be honest with you. But hey, that's the nature of 2020
Yeah.
roller coaster.
Are you going to be braving it to the cinema?
Is it out? Is it out in the cinema or is it just digital?
In America, it's been released for free on HBO Max. But and then it's been simultaneously released in cinemas. We can't really go to the cinema, but also we don't have HBO Max, so we don't really have any options. So we'll have to see what happens. But yeah,
Yeah.
at this moment, we don't really have any options.
Yeah, I know. I remember like for the KSI Logan Paul fight, someone just like thousands of people watched the fight in reflection of someone's glasses. That's probably what we're gonna have to do for this film if we get around to it. But no, anyway, I'm rambling here. Thanks very much for today, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, viewers,
Thank
for
you.
listening to this episode. We'll be back later on in the next week or two with a few more podcasts and videos. So take care, everyone. Take care, Callum, and bye bye.
Bye bye.